If there's one type of grief that people are really familiar with, beyond regular old grief, which I pretty much stay in regular old grief, it's grief is grief is grief. I say that all the time. But we also have a title of grief called anticipatory grief. This is a term that was coined by the psychiatrist Erich Lindman in the 1940s to describe grief that begins before a loss. It starts the moment you realize that they've been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It starts the moment you realize that she has breast cancer. Now hear me out. She has breast cancer. She's going to have a mastectomy. That is a grieving experience. Getting the diagnosis is a grieving experience. You realize that this loss is inevitable and it's coming down the pike. It is on your horizon. The mastectomy went well, but now the grief has shown up in her lungs. When your mind opens up to the harsh reality of what is happening to you in the not so distant future, that your relationship is coming to an abrupt end by no making of your own, we start the grieving experience then. Now you start to think about the fact that you have to sell your longtime home, or the person you love is dying. It's having to sell your home because you have to pay for the surgeries and all the things she had is a part of the grieving experience. It's the anticipatory grief. It's the grief you have to look forward to. You begin grieving the future you assumed that you would have. The loss of your dreams, the loss of your hopes. You start imagining what life will look like. You start to feel a little different. You may even go through days of depression. But one of the things I know to be true from my own personal experience, understanding anticipatory grief, I remember standing at the hospital bed for my dad and trying as hard as I could to imagine what my heart was going to feel like. To imagine what it was going to feel like when he died. And I really could not get there. My body and my mind could not go there. Even though I'd already experienced the loss of Austin, I couldn't figure it out. It's so important to remember that anticipatory grief doesn't mean that you're going to grieve any less. It doesn't mean that you're going to grieve any more. Or that it will be necessary, it will be easier because you had it earlier on. It doesn't mean any of those things. Because as I was standing at his deathbed, and my dad absolutely passed away, what I was trying to imagine came full-fledged into my heart, into my body, and into my brain. And no matter as hard as I tried to imagine what it was going to be like without him, I had to go through that experience. But what I was losing before and what I was grieving before was the fact that he was no longer walking. The fact that he had stopped talking days before. The fact that I was going to have to live a life without him in it. The fact that I wasn't going to be able to pick up the phone and call and have a conversation with him anymore. Those are the things that I was grieving. The fact that my daughter was getting married and he was not going to be there. I was anticipating what that was going to be like, and that was absolutely breaking my heart.